Let me know if you didn't get a reminder for today. I'd love to hear that so we can know that we can remind you better to be here, to join us, to be part of our class. So thank you everyone for joining in. We really appreciate it. Oh, I think my sound is a little bit loud today. So let me know. I think I know what I need to adjust for that is the background noise. Let me see if I can adjust those audio settings here, and we'll take your questions. So let's go ahead. Optimized and original sound. It looks like it's optimized for background. Automatically adjusts noise suppression. So let's go low, I guess, and see if that helps at all. So thank you again for being part of our class today. Now we are talking about blood sugar and diabetes, a hugely important discussion to have. So what we do is we bring you naturopathic or natural health information. And when we do that, what we also want to do is bring you things that you can do on your Genius. So if you go to geniusbiofeedback.com and go to the blog, then you will be able to find this particular handout. Okay, so a warm welcome. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you so much. It's always fun to have you join us from Norway. Christina is joining us from British Columbia, so thank you so much. That's in Canada, for those of you who might not know. Thank you so much. And she did get the reminders. Okay, Wendy, fantastic. And Heidi, thank you for joining. So you can grab this handout on the blood sugar harmonizing process, and that will be then available. So go to the blog, get the blood sugar harmonizing process. We are going to be having another learning intensive, which is a free event. It's usually a 3-day event. We'll be announcing it'll be sometime in February, coming up in the next couple of weeks. And what we do in that event is it's a beginner's event, and we want to update it for the new version. And what we're going to do in that one is we're going to do processes and exercises with people, how to achieve things with the Genius. So that'll be coming up. It'll be a 3-day event. It'll be a couple of hours each time. It'll be free, so we can invite people who are interested in the Genius, and we'll tell you more about that as we have more information. So be sure to go to geniusbiofeedback.com and check out this blog. You'll also want to check out our events page. So you can check out our events page at the events right here. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the events coming up. So you can check out our events page here. It tells you all about how to join our various events. Now we do want to get your questions. So we'll take a volunteer. Somebody wants to volunteer to work on blood sugar, or if they have diabetes type 2 or diabetes type 1, we're going to talk about what all of those are in just a moment. And let me also make some adjustments here. And then we're going to talk about these various events coming up. And blood sugar is a really important one to talk about. We'll talk about a process that you can do. Let's see if we can just close a few of these applications. And we want your best questions. So questions that came up for you during the week. What questions do you have that I could answer for you about the Genius in general? Remember, if possible, not to mention things that are of technical support issue. So we're not taking technical support questions, but you can email them, Ariel at geniusbiofeedback.com or support at geniusbiofeedback.com, and we'll be happy to answer them for you there. All right, what is happening here and here? A few things I need to make better. All right, now that's much better. Okay, a few things to improve. Okay, if somebody with diabetes wants to volunteer, but it could be just somebody who's concerned about their blood sugar, or it could be somebody who wants to lose weight, because losing weight is very much related to blood sugar. So really, anybody who would like frequencies today, we would love to have you volunteer. So go ahead and put your date of birth into the chat section. It looks like there is a new version for this morning. So I've just seen it. Looks like it says it's 3:10. I don't know if anybody's downloaded it yet. I haven't had a chance to download it, so I'm going to actually download it while we're talking. Okay, a Zoom user. So Zoom user, January 19th, we don't have your name. It just says Zoom user. So perhaps you're tuning in on your phone, something like that. We're going to need your full name for that. So we only have Zoom user. So we're going to need your name in order to do that. So it does look like we do have a new version, which looks like it's 310, something related to that. I think the developer has put a notation into the download that says that if you possible, don't navigate away from the screen as you're downloading the libraries. I want to remind everybody, I guess something that's very, very obvious, but maybe not to every user, is that you can never lose your libraries. You can never, ever lose your libraries. You know, it's funny, historically, if we go back in time, way back, there was a time when you could lose your libraries and we had to use a Dropbox and it was crazy. And that's going all the way back to 2014, 2015. But today, all of your libraries are stored in the cloud system. And when you log out, you're going to be prompted when you log back in, you're going to get a big notation that says, hey, you need to re-download your libraries. And you do that by clicking on the semicircles at the top right of the screen, and you go through and don't navigate away from all the different lists, NeuroRemedy, Master Branch, user libraries. Make sure you download each and every one of them. We call them databases. Okay, do you regularly update and add to the libraries, and will they automatically update ours as well? We don't really make too many additions to existing libraries, so it's not something you have to worry about. What I would do as just a really good best practice, Joseph, is every week, just go ahead and log out and log back in. Okay, so anybody who wants to volunteer to have their blood sugar worked on, January 19th, we're going to need your name. All right. Oh, it's Karen. Okay, she wants to be worked on for blood sugar. Gotcha. Do you regularly add? Okay, we took that. Is there anybody maybe? I would love to do some work with you, Karen. Always happy to. Is there anybody maybe who's new or somebody that you know, Karen, that has not had a scan? Okay, so Missy, let's go ahead and work with you, and thank you so much. And Karen, you know, I'll be happy to work with you separately and run some frequencies and actually send some frequencies to your Quanta capsule. I'd be more than happy to do that. All right, well, so Missy, we'll work with you, and you can think a little bit about what you want us to focus on. I want to welcome everybody to our weekly training. A really easy way that you can share the training with people who are very, very interested in learning more about what we do is to send them this link. It's biofeedbacksuccess.com/weekly training. Biofeedbacksuccess.com. It's just a short link so that you could just easily remember in your mind, oh, biofeedbacksuccess.com/weekly training. Now anybody can instantly get the Zoom that we share. So just sort of keep that in your back pocket. It's good to invite people who tell you they might be interested in the genius. It might be a referral for you. Have them come to class because we try to really demystify everything in our class. All right, now on Thursday, Karen McDonald is awesome. She joins us every week and we co-host, talk about the events of the week, particularly in response to the thing that goes in the arm that we don't really say too much on YouTube. I think you know what that is. We talk all about how to clear that from the body. We talk about the latest articles and issues that have come up. You know, we talk about N-acetylcysteine, we talk about graphene, we talk about glutathione. And Nicole Stanley is one of our wonderful genius practitioners, and she's going to be joining us from the great state of Tennessee, where she's recently moved to. I'm excited to have her. She's going to join us. So there'll be three of us talking on Thursday. And she's going to be talking about strategies for those who have done this thing, or we're going to say gently that they have participated. We'll just say the word participated, but we'll talk about shedding. And she has a really interesting take on working with breaking contracts, canceling certain energetic contracts as a way to help people to get better much faster who have participated. Okay, So Veronica, please, if possible, there's no way for me to handle technical issues or bugs during our webinar. So try to just send them. We also don't really want to confuse people who are in the chat who may read your comment and then get confused. And Karen, thanks for the nice words about the show. I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so Veronica says, well, you mentioned the library, so that's why I'm saying it. Okay, so let's see what you've said here. Veronica says, libraries, when you're adding bulk after upgrading the packages, will it automatically add all that are missing? It didn't seem like mine did, and I had to go add one by one of those that wasn't added. So no, when you add a bulk code, anytime you import a bulk code, it will add all the libraries. However, it's going to take some time. So if you navigated or if your screen locked, it didn't download all the libraries. Now, Veronica, I wish you had gotten in touch with us so we could have spoken you through it. We don't like to hear that you entered your libraries one by one by one. That makes me sad because that's a very long process when you have our Master Elite Plus package. That all being said, there's no reason you shouldn't have your libraries. So if you still think you don't have your libraries, then please get in touch with me personally, and I'll be more than happy to help you. So just send me a message, Ariel at geniusbiofeedback.com, and I will help you out as best as I can to make sure that you have each and every library that was in your order. We're always happy to do that. Please understand that, we're doing our best with the various glitches and things that have been presented to us by the developer. We're just always trying to find a good workaround, do the best to get you everything that you have in your package. Okay, so we would love to have any other questions. So now is a good time. Welcome everybody who's joined us as we've gotten into the hour here. Send your questions just related to the functions of the Genius. We would love to hear your technical questions at support@geniusbiofeedback.com. And so any questions just about the Genius in general would be awesome so we can answer them for everybody here. All right, on Tuesdays, we have our terahertz training. So whether you have a terahertz product or you'd like to get one, we have a unique product called a Core Box, which has 5 terahertz chips, and it runs red light and blue light. We're getting amazing results, as we heard a testimonial on Tuesday for a gentleman that went from an 8 out of 10 in pain to a 2 out of 10 in pain. After I think it was just one session, he continued to get better. So these terahertz frequencies are very special, but just come and learn more about what they are. And we show you where to use your terahertz, like use it on lymphatic points, use it on kidney meridian points or different Chinese meridian points. So we give you a methodology of using it, as well as sharing testimonials and answering your questions. So if you're curious, if you maybe have gotten terahertz and you've not been able to do much with it, you certainly can join us, and those who have never had a terahertz technology can join us. I think the unique thing about running red and blue light, that's really, really something very, very cool. Now we want to talk today, and we're also going to answer your questions. So I think there's somebody put something in the Q&A here. When is it appropriate to run a frequency continuously for an issue? That's sort of a personal decision. Sometimes when I've been really wanting to work on a client who's in a very, very serious state of distress and I want to just continue that energy, I will put it on infinite loop. But the way that frequencies generally work is a little bit, 15 minutes or 30 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night. And then think of it like an exercise session. You wouldn't want to exercise all day. You do your intense exercise focused session, and then you have lots of reverberating effects throughout the day. Your metabolism is better, your muscles are growing, things are happening to your body in between sessions. And you should think about biofeedback like that. So if it's really an intense issue and you want to just keep that focus, then turn it down to 0 and run a continuous loop. However, it's really not the paradigm that we teach for daily practice. Let's talk a little bit about diabetes. It's something that it's amazing that all over the Western world, or any world that has any part of the world that has introduced Western foods. So for example, Japan, right? Japan did not have a very high incidence of diabetes for many, many years. And probably in the 60s and 70s, when they started to introduce more Western fast food, McDonald's and so forth, then they started to have more cardiovascular disease, more incidence of diabetes. The cut to the chase here is that diabetes is a disease of excess. It is a disease of the rich Western diet. But there are certain powers that be, certain elements that want you to think otherwise. And they want you, how we've learned, when you should be looking here, they want you to look over here. Oh, peekaboo, look over here, look at this. And so there's a lot of deception with diabetes. They try to think that it's all about sugar, and that's not what it's really about, which we're going to see in just a moment. So maybe new information, fun information to learn about the real secret underpinnings of any particular disease, which we get to learn about in natural medicine. Now, keep putting your questions into the chat. I would love to hear more about your questions. Are wonderful. So keep your questions coming and we'll come back to them. We do have Ascension libraries on the website, geniusbiofeedback.com. But Jennifer, and welcome back. I know you've been a long-time user of the Genius. It's really cool to see you here in our training. When you say Ascension, it's really good to say the elements of Ascension that you're looking for. Is it emotional resolution? Is it actually physically raising up your vibration? Is it dealing with the other chakras besides the regular 7 chakras? What is the aspect that you are looking for when you say you want a library about Ascension? All right, so diabetes, getting back to the more pedestrian things here. We have type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetics do not make any insulin whatsoever. They need an injection on a daily basis of insulin in order to process sugar coming in. So to back up even more, every single day we require a breakdown of our food. We require food to live. We require calories, and the majority of those calories gets broken down ultimately to glucose. And glucose is the raw material that goes through our mitochondria to make ATP. So every time you want to move a muscle, you want your heart to beat, you want any part of your body, your liver to work, you want your brain to think, you want to have energy to run and exercise and do yoga, you need ATP. ATP comes from glucose. Glucose ultimately comes from the breakdown of the majority of foods that we eat. So when you look at the foods that you're eating, you want to say, am I getting a bang for my buck? And is it going to break down into the wonderful glucose that especially my brain needs to function? Or am I eschewing the glucose element by going on a low carb diet, and then I don't feel good, I can't understand why I'm tired, I need lots of stimulants? And that's what most people do, because as I say, the powers that be, now we know they're not so good, maybe not trying to help us, and they're saying, look over here at this thing, and we really want to understand the underlying physiology. But type 1 diabetics, they typically it's from an autoimmune condition when they were children or at some point in their adulthood. They've lost the ability for their pancreas to produce insulin. Insulin is an important chemical that really helps our body get glucose into the cell. So it really helps. We're going to look at a picture in just a moment. It helps glucose get into the cell. When we eat, we consume food. When we consume the food, it goes into our stomach and into our small intestine. It's not in our bloodstream yet. Then it goes through the mucosa, goes into our bloodstream. But even all of that great food, even the best food that's going to break down into glucose and energize us, is still not available until it moves from our bloodstream into the cells. The longer it stays in the bloodstream, the more harm it can do to us. It doesn't belong there. It can damage the vessels. It can cause a process called glycosylation that can also produce something called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which literally gives us the appearance of aging. The longer that blood has to hang out in the blood vessels, in the blood itself, the more danger we're in. The faster we can shuttle glucose into the cells, the more energy we will have and the more healthy our vessels will be. So the problem is mechanisms that stop the secretion of insulin or the responsiveness of our cells to insulin. If we're able to produce insulin well, which type 1 diabetics cannot do, and if our cells are responsive to insulin, which often does not happen for type 2 diabetics that are especially people who are overweight, and we'll talk about that, then we don't get glucose into our cell. We don't feel good. We don't have energy, and it can do serious damage to the body, which is what we're talking about. So this is the crux of the whole thing, is really getting glucose shuttled into the cells with a little lock and key receptor, which is the insulin receptor site, and then insulin connecting with the receptor and opening that channel or opening that door and allowing all of that glucose to properly pour into the cells, where then it goes into the mitochondria and gets converted to something called ATP. And you can think about this as gasoline at the pump, right? That doesn't start out as gasoline, starts out as oil. It has to be refined. Then it's awesome gasoline that makes your car run. And that's what's happening inside the mitochondria. It's unrefined glucose, gets refined to ATP. We're able to use it all day. So if you're able to think clearly, have tons of energy, then you're probably processing your glucose very, very well. The main thing that stops your glucose from getting into the cells, and the main thing that stops that insulin from working well, turns out, is something called intramyocellular adipose, which is also known as fat. Fat is the biggest enemy of proper blood sugar regulation. And I know this flies in the face of many, many things that you hear in popular culture. And that is because all these different factions often want to sell you something. There's a wonderful product that they want to make sure that you purchase. And so they confuse, obfuscate, hide the reality. A rich diet too high in fat is the main reason that so many people are sick, which is boggling to the mind. If they only had the proper information, the proper knowledge, they could be well. And the complications of diabetes make it the one of the top 5 killers in the world, which is unbelievable. Tens of thousands of people. I mean, this whole thing about the COVID, what that thing is, and the catastrophizing over it, when so many people are suffering from high blood sugar, diabetes, and the complications of diabetes. No, you never hear anybody talk about that epidemic or that crisis, really, but you know what I'm talking about, and Fauci and so forth. Okay, let's move on. So type 2 diabetes is the most manageable form of diabetes, typically develops in adulthood from diet, from the foods that you're consuming. It really can be controlled, healed, and you can emerge from it very successfully by understanding some of the key biochemical concepts that I'm talking about. Oh, I switched the slides here. So we are going to be starting a prayer circle, and I'll talk about that more. We're going to start it on the 14th on Valentine's Day, and I'll tell you more in our newsletter, but I apologize. I switched the slides here. Let me just hang on it just for a moment. Everybody's going to be welcome. It's going to be completely free. It's not necessarily going to be related to the genius. It's just an opportunity for us to pray for global healing. You can bring your genius, and we'll also pray for you individually. We'll also bring some words of scripture from Christianity and Buddhism. That's going to start next week on Valentine's Day at noon. You can drop in, drop out. It's going to be completely free. So we'll welcome you to prayer circle at that time. Okay, back to diabetes. Now, when we look at diabetes and blood sugar, I want you to understand what we understand as a naturopathic doctor, what I had the privilege of learning as a naturopathic doctor, going to a medical college and learning all of this. I want you to understand this. So picture is worth 1,000 words, right? When you eat food, okay, let's just say it was a potato or brown rice, right? It's a complex carbohydrate. Because it has many complex sugars in it, it ultimately breaks down to glucose. It goes into your stomach, goes into your small intestine, you absorb it. Okay, glucose enters from the from the bloodstream to the bloodstream from the intestines. It goes into the bloodstream. Now, it's like an emergency situation when it's in your bloodstream. You want to get it out of the bloodstream as soon as possible. So then insulin, your pancreas then starts to produce insulin in knowing that you've eaten. So the pancreas is going to be very busy producing insulin, and it sends that into your bloodstream as well. This travels to the cell, okay? A healthy balance of insulin and glucose circulates in the bloodstream. And then this very important, there's a receptor site here. The insulin binds to the cell, and it basically opens up the cell so that glucose can come into the cell. Once glucose is in the cell, it can do everything we need it to do, which is converting glucose into ATP. So if you have sufficient amounts of insulin, and if your cell is receptive, right? We know about the word insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance. Then everything goes well and there's no problem. Now, where is the problem? So with insulin resistance, glucose can't enter the cells efficiently, so there's too much of it circulating in the bloodstream. So if there's two things that can happen over time, you can kind of get a pancreatic exhaustion where there's damage to the pancreas for different reasons that we can talk about. And so you're not able to produce enough insulin. And there's also insulin resistance that for some reason the receptor will not connect with the insulin. It will not respond to the insulin. This is called insulin resistance. Now, the top reason for insulin resistance is being overweight, and we think that is related to the adipose tissue, but also the consumption of a diet that is high in fat. That is really what the amazing, shocking thing about the regulation of blood sugar. So if the cell can't open for glucose to enter and be used for fuel, so if it's stuck outside of the cell, it circulates into the blood sugar, where the blood sugar begins to elevate. And you all know about fasting blood sugar. Fasting blood sugar above 100 can result in a diagnosis of prediabetes or diabetes if it's done a couple of times. So whatever your body tries to do, really over a long period of time, it cannot shuttle the glucose, the wonderful food that you've consumed, from your bloodstream into your cells. And that's when problems start to happen at the level of the blood, at the level of the vessel. And of course, you're going to feel tired. You're not going to feel good. All right. And so another picture here of the insulin. This is actually the insulin receptor. Insulin, this is like a lock and a key. So you may have enough insulin, but if your receptors are covered by adipose tissue, which can happen, or if something is happening biochemically, making them less responsive, which we think is the intramyocellular fat issue, then the insulin will not be able to fit or connect with the insulin receptor and will not be able to get glucose into the cell. So when everything works great, then this lock and key works wonderfully, and then we're able to shuttle glucose into the cell all day long. So if fasting glucose is above 100 milligrams per deciliter, or fasting glucose means blood sugar after having fasted for 12 hours, you might go to a lab and get fasting blood sugar. Then when it's over 100 milligrams per deciliter, over a couple of different tests, they can say you have prediabetes. I think a little bit higher gives you the diagnosis of diabetes type 2. Also, you can have prediabetes, which they define as metabolic syndrome, and lots of things can tell you that you're leaning towards diabetes. If you have high triglycerides, if you have increased blood pressure, if you have high fasting blood sugar, but also central obesity. So if your waistline starts to increase, that's a sign that you may be leaning into diabetes. So if you're around the midsection, it's a huge risk for cardiovascular disease and even for insulin resistance. Now, there's a wonderful book called Overcoming Diabetes or Reversing Diabetes by Dr. Neil Barnard. And he's done such wonderful actual research in this book to show you how and why things work. So it's Dr. Neil Barnard, his program for reversing diabetes. And of course, you can use your genius. We're going to talk about some principles to use it. But just as an example, if you go to see a diabetologist or an endocrinologist for your diabetes type 2, and they're going to counsel you on diet, they're going to give you a diet created by Lilly. And Lilly is a company that produces the main diabetes medication. So I don't know if Lilly can be too objective about producing information for you about what diet to eat when they have a huge financial interest in making sure that you're always on these different diabetes medications. Now, we did take up this topic in the practitioner level on diabetes, blood sugar, and weight loss, where you can find out more information, because you really should know that a lot of these diabetes medications have very concerning consequences, especially for a disease that could be easily overcome through dietary changes if people just knew the truth. So some of the things that they say is, estimating portion sizes, and you should count your carbs and things like that. Some of these things are not bad, but calorie restriction is going to be one of the most difficult ways for people to lose weight. We have to find a calorically less dense diet for people that when they eat, it will cause them to feel a level of satiety from the fiber and the nutritional value of the food. But trying to just tell you to eat these certain foods, not tell you the right foods, and tell you just to restrict portion size is going to be a recipe for failure, as many people try to do this will do. And unfortunately, those who have type 2 diabetes and are also taking external insulin, it's really tough, because the insulin that they take exogenously to try to help them actually stores fat. It tells fat to store and not break down into fatty acids. And so that's why a lot of people who are on medications for type 2 diabetes can get very frustrated very quickly. They're not being given the right dietary information. They're taking that type 2 diabetic, the insulin supplements, and it's very difficult for them to lose weight, and they'll feel very frustrated and overwhelmed. Okay, so like I said, calorie restriction typically does not work. And my recommendation, Dr. Neil Barnard's recommendation, is a plant-based diet. Now, you have to read about it first, learn about it, learn about why it's so important. It's the fat piece that really is the issue. So moderate carbohydrate, but low fat. Low fat is the key. And it's not like low-fat milk. It's like you're eating really high-quality, whole fat. Do you really think that most Western populations are walking around, if you just go to a city anywhere and go around and see if people look like they're suffering from a fat deficiency, you're probably not going to see it, right? All right, so glucose travels via the blood. It cannot stay there. Diabetes means there's a blockage of moving the glucose from the blood to the cell. Either insulin is too low, like we can't secrete it like in diabetes type 1, or there's insulin resistance, or a combination of both. Glucose gets stuck in the blood vessels and it starves your cell, which is desperate for glucose. By the way, you can keep your questions about the genius coming as I'm doing my lecture here, and we'll come back and answer them. Some symptoms of diabetes are called polydipsia, polyphagia, and polyuria, because medical professionals love to talk in coded language that's difficult for you to understand. But what that basically means is that you're really thirsty, you're really hungry, and you're urinating a lot. And these are signs that you may have very high circulating blood sugar that could be harmful. So typical diabetes diet recommendations are to limit starchy foods like bread, potatoes, rice, pasta, because they break down to glucose. Some of these are good, but some of these are good recommendations, right, to maybe take out the bread, but the low starch, take out potatoes is not a good recommendation. Even bread, if you had it without butter or without these different high-fat foods, would not be necessarily bad, but when you're consuming these foods, you'll be more satiated, and you'll tend to eat less foods when they're less calorie dense. And this can be a whole other lecture that's fascinating. As foods are broken down into flour and they're more refined and more water is removed, you will eat more of them in one setting because they're very calorie dense, and they don't create as much satiety as foods that are whole. They tend to have more water content in them and more fiber content, and so you get satisfied faster. So having a big bowl of potatoes, like just try to get through that bowl. Like you're going to be halfway through the bowl of potatoes with nothing on them, no butter, no sour cream, anything like that, just a nice baked potato. And first of all, most people find that delicious. you're trying to get through a bowl of them, by the time you're a quarter of the way through, you're like, I just can't eat anymore, because your tummy has that stretch mechanism. It's really satiated. It's getting a lot of good quality food, a lot of good fiber. But if you had a loaf of bread, you might be able to go through the loaf of bread because all that water is removed, because it's flour, because it doesn't have the same amount of fiber. So think about that. Calorie density is a huge way that you can lose weight successfully, by learning the principles. You want to eat foods that are less calorie dense. So for example, olive oil is way more calorie dense than a watermelon. Okay, that's going to have a lot more calories in that pure fat than a watermelon or a potato or a bowl of brown rice. Now, your body needs glucose, and the biggest thing that they have been trying to hide from you, they who don't really want you to be as healthy as possible, allegedly, is trying to hide from you, keep you on low carb diets, which are just like death diets. Like, they're miserable. They make you depressed. They don't give you all the energy that you need. What you really need in your body is glucose. So whether it's in the form of brown rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, butternut squash, and I like to put a lot of fruits into my diet. So honeydew melon and blueberries and mangoes and all these things are actually extremely good for your body. The thing that makes it difficult for your body to regulate those, and you might think, oh, that's high glycemic, oh, that sounds high sugar, things like that, is when you eat them with fat. When you do not eat them with external fats, with different fat sources, your body will regulate all of that blood sugar extremely well. And you will have a lot of energy. I think especially for women throughout their whole teenage to adult life, they're being told low carb, you have to limit your carbs. If you eat carbs, you're going to be fat. And that's in our psyche in a huge way. And what we do is we don't eat enough carbs. Think of a runner running a marathon. If that runner, he or she, does not have enough carbs, they bonk out. They literally will collapse. And think about it in the course of your daily life, where you're always limiting your ability to get the true fuel that your body needs. And that will change your whole scenario. You want to really learn about all these wonderful whole food, plant-based foods, even if it's not fruit-based, some fruit, and get the books of Dr. McDougall and Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Barnard, and they have wonderful recipes in there where you can start eating these foods, feel satisfied, lose weight, and forget about diabetes. You'll never have to worry about it. And if you have it, you can heal from it. Okay, so these are whole food forms of starch, like potatoes, sweet potatoes, squash, rice. They all have minerals and fiber, and you really need a high mineral diet as well to have better insulin sensitivity. All right, so all these foods, when they're low fat, they really restore. And who doesn't love, when you see things like rice or potatoes or lentil soup, you just start salivating. Like that's, really your food that you were meant to eat. And there's a reason that when you look at those foods, you feel like, gosh, that would be so satisfying. That would be delicious. Okay, interesting that there was a 1979 study at the University of Kentucky that 20 men were taking an average intake of 26 units of insulin per day. This is obviously diabetics. And they ate a diet of vegetables, fruit, whole grains, beans, high fiber diet, almost no fat, no oil, and 5% or less of animal products. So it wasn't completely vegan, but they had 5% or less of animal products. And then after 16 days, this was a type 2 diabetes study, more than half stopped taking the insulin entirely. Blood sugar levels were lower than before. The remaining men who didn't benefit, which was the 16, so 4 of the men, insulin doses were cut dramatically. This works every time. It's completely predictable. It's the rich Western diet with the fat from dairy, eggs, meat. And I really have mixed feelings about whether the limitation of eggs and the high eggs isn't a great benefit for all of humanity, because just that level of fat is going to impair your ability to get sugar into your cells. And it happens every day, even for those of us who think that we're healthy and we're skinny and we're good weight and we have no problem. Deep inside the body, there is a situation building if we're still consuming dairy and eggs and meat and chicken and fish, there's a situation building that later on in life could result in diabetes type 2. And this is why. There's a mysterious occurrence happening inside of your cell every single day that you don't know about, because you might think you're healthy weight, you're as healthy as can be, and so forth. There's a 2004 Yale University study, young adults whose grandparents had type 2 diabetes. Some were insulin resistant despite being thin, and others were healthy. So it turns out that there were tiny amounts of fat inside the cell. And this, even a small amount of fat, the intramyocellular lipids, interfered with the insulin's ability to work. So the body makes insulin normally, but once it gets to the muscle, then the problem occurs. So the cells did not respond to the insulin due to fat. So basically they found that these healthy, skinny 19, 20 something, that they had the beginning development of type 2 diabetes, and they didn't even know it, because our bodies basically were not ever made, like all of for millions of years, human beings have been roaming the earth, and they have not found a lot of high value, high fat foods. And so our vascular system was not ready for the industrial and agricultural revolution, where caloric intake could increase substantially and be so easy as the grocery store and the next door market and the McDonald's drive-through. Our vessels and our body are simply not prepared. And when the body, diabetes is actually a mechanism that the body uses so that you don't grow to be 800 pounds. It actually is stopping that blood sugar from going into your cells so you don't store more energy. It's saying, man, we got to stop this. And so just the high consumption of fat, it cannot be emphasized enough how much your body just objectively is not able to handle that from a vessel perspective and from an endocrine blood sugar perspective. And thousands of people could be freed of their medication and their suffering if they just understood these simple concepts. So even if you're not overweight, if you consume meat in your diet regularly, egg, cheese, milk, butter, oils, such as coconut or even olive oil, it's easy for this to build up over time. The Yale study showed that the accumulation of fat inside the cells, intramyocellular lipids, over time sets up the condition to develop insulin resistance and diabetes, which I think that's why we have so much type 2 diabetes that we're trying to deal with. Millions and millions of people worldwide. And this is a great picture from Neil Barnard's book about reversing diabetes. And so he shows these intramyocellular lipids, and what they're doing is they're sending out a signaling message by virtue of them being there, and they're causing the sort of the gumming up of this ability for the insulin to attach to the insulin receptor. And so then the glucose cannot get into the cells because of this fat. Now, the minute that you go on a plant-based diet and you stop eating oil or lots of fat, even nut butters and so forth, the minute you get those out and you're eating, other delicious, the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the lentil soup, things that are low fat, then the minute that happens, then this process starts to reverse, and all of a sudden the blood sugar improves and people can get off their insulin and they can get off their other diabetes medications, which are like the metformin, which also you don't want to be on if you don't need to be. Okay, so just a little bit more about intramyocellular lipid, and we'll sort of finish this up. So what it does when you're on this low-fat diet, basically it instantly flips on your metabolism. So would you like to have a higher metabolism? Would you like to have more energy? The minute that you make this plan, then you have way more ATP being produced, and Dr. Bernard was even able to show that this switches on the metabolism very quickly. So you have a better burning metabolism. So these low-fat diets actually switch on the production of mitochondria. Okay, and then this is the same thing that we talked about before. This was a study done at Pennington Biomedical Research Center. 10 men, average age of 23, average weight of 174 pounds. They ate a high-fat diet. 50% of their calories came from fat. In 3 days, there was a massive increase in the intramyocellular lipids and down-regulation of their metabolism. The more fat you're eating in your diet, ironically, the slower the metabolism will be. The other thing that after years of being a naturopath, and studying everything on the sun related to health, one sentence changed my life. And that is, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. And you can just try it out for yourself. If you don't want to be overweight, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. And that's because when you consume any type of fat, whether it be olive oil, milk, eggs, dairy, even peanut butter, that type of thing, it's very easy to convert it biochemically from the fat in your bloodstream to actually just shuttle it into storage fat in your body. It's a very easy conversion. But when you eat a potato, it takes a really a lot of biochemical steps to take that potato and turn it into fat. It tends to be just burned off in the body or stored as something called glycogen, which is energy that we can use later when we want to exercise and so forth. So it's a lot less able to convert something like a potato with no fat to actual fat. Okay, so we talked about all of this. And I'm going to just skip through some of this just for time. We talked about all of this. And I do just want to mention, again, very difficult for a potato to turn to fat, but your olive oil and your peanut butter and so forth turns to fat very easily. And I just want to mention a few herbs that we're going to talk about as we talk about diabetes and our blood sugar as we work on our person today. And that is something called gymnema. So gymnema in Hindi, it translates to the sugar destroyer. It reduces the absorption of sugar from the intestinal, reduces the absorption of sugar from the intestinal tract. That means you excrete part of it. So it can be helpful with weight loss, and it actually boosts insulin production. So that's gymnema, wonderful Indian herb. And then there's also chromium. So you can take chromium as a supplement. This is one of the minerals. The more minerals you consume, the better your insulin will work. So if you think about having a lot of plants and a lot of fruits and vegetables in your diet, you're going to have more minerals. And so that lets you have better insulin regulation. So chromium picolinate is one of those minerals that really stands out. If you take between 200 and 1,000 micrograms of chromium picolinate, you will tend to regulate your blood sugar better. And you can get chromium naturally from food in true brewer's yeast, Brazil nuts, or even grapes, which seems weird, but yes, it's chromium is in probably the grape skin. And also just in general, that, make sure that you're getting lots of fruits and vegetables, and you'll tend to get more chromium. But you could also take it as a supplement, and that would be specifically chromium picolinate, because there's different types of chromium as well. There's chromium nicotinate as well, but this one is for chromium picolinate. Okay, so there are several chemicals in something called bitter melon, or Mamordica charantia, which is another Indian plant. And the bitter melon has incredible amount of vitamins and minerals in it. And so what you would do is you can steam this. You could put it into like a stir fry or something like that, hopefully without oil. And there are other ways you can consume it, like as a capsule. And so bitter melon actually acts like insulin. So people who are really insulin fatigued or just not producing enough insulin could potentially supplement bitter melon and not have to take medications. And okay, that's from the lecture. All right, there was one more slide which was supposed to be on, no, it was bitter melon. Yeah, bitter melon, chromium, and of course, gymnema. So with that, let's go to our volunteer. Let's find our volunteer and we'll get to your questions. So Missy has volunteered and we'll find out how she's doing today. And all right, so let's bring her up here. Okay, Missy, we're going to bring you up here as a panelist, and then we're going to work on you on the Genius, find out how you're doing. We're going to answer some of the questions that people have today. So let's see how Missy is doing. Okay, Missy, warm welcome to you. Thank you for being with us.
Hi.
All right, Missy, now how long have you been using the Genius for?
Maybe 6 months?
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds right.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think you've been really hit the ground running, and you've been doing quite a bit of work.
I did. I'm planning to incorporate this into a business I'm starting. So it's just
Cool.
going slow. I have two little kids that are go to daycare part-time.
Okay.
So whenever
Very
I have
interesting.
time, I'm working on it hard.
Okay, fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, let's give you some energy, give you some frequencies today. Is there any concern about blood sugar, or just let's just get some frequencies and participate?
Last year I got labs done because I went into my naturopathic doctor because I was gaining weight and I was like, no, I should not be gaining weight. I think my hormones are off. Give me a pan. I wanted to do a hormone panel, and
Sure.
which I think I did, but anyway, it came up that she determined I had some insulin resistance going on. And I was shocked because I live a healthy lifestyle and thought I had everything managed and pretty well. Um, and as far as diet went, I was eating well, in my opinion. I I was eating um higher fat foods, meats, dairy, because I was kind of coming off being I was either pregnant or breastfeeding,
I
or
thought
pregnant
you were
and
going to say
breastfeeding
that for sure.
for
Yeah,
the
I
last
understand.
5 years. This was like a
You need
year
to get those
ago.
calories in when you're
So
breastfeeding.
I
For sure.
needed a
Yeah,
lot of food, and
yeah.
I still feel like I was a little malnourished, but I needed heavy food. But then after, when I stopped breastfeeding my
Right.
um
That makes
last
sense.
one, I
That makes sense.
transitioned to more less meat, less fat and everything. But I still don't think that was the reason. I was like, there's something else. There's other root cause that I'm having insulin resistance.
All right.
So
Well,
then I was
let's
on a
look at
journey
it.
to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I still I mean, I could have actually healed it. I haven't been, maybe because the genius has given me so much positivity that I don't really give a crap anymore about my weight. Like, who cares if I gained a few pounds? I'm just so um I haven't really focused on it, and I've been using it on other people, that I haven't been focusing on my own health as much as other people. So I could have actually reversed the insulin resistant. I haven't really tapped into it in a while, but some signs say I think I'm still struggling with a little bit, even with the change of diet. So I was trying to determine, like, is it the thyroid? Is it some leaky gut going on? Is it mineral deficiency? I just feel like there's
Yeah,
some other reason.
let's look at some of those things.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for that direction and introduction. That's really helpful. Let's record your voice so that we can look at some of those things for you.
Okay.
I'll start. I'm going to use this right here offline here from the Zoom, and I'll start recording your voice in 3, 2, 1. I'm recording.
My name is Missy North Drain. AEIOU. 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 AEIOU.
Perfect. Perfect. I think people will wonder with your name, is that in a given family name?
North is it's North hyphenated. It's North
Yeah.
hyphen Drain. So
Yes.
my yeah. So North is my family name, and then my married name is North Drain.
So that's all. That's nothing in there is because there's different geopathic changes, and so it could be like a north drain. Like I thought it might be an energetic name that you took, or an indigenous name or something. This is all just natural.
Oh no, that's my given name. Yep.
Absolutely, completely understand. We're going to get your picture in just a moment here, and just going to go to the next screen to get that and make it a little bigger here. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm home, Lewiston, Maine.
Oh, wonderful. How's the weather?
Cold, lots of snow. We just came off a very, very, very cold weekend, but that actually today is like 40, so it feels like summer.
I'm sure. It's interesting how human beings have the ability to really adapt to weather. And as soon as you're used to cold like that level, then when it is 40, it feels
Yeah.
just downright balmy and like, oh, no
Yeah.
big deal. I could do this all year long. Wonderful. And it must be so beautiful where you live.
It is. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to give you a chance to just sit back, relax, and enjoy this. I'm going to bring up the genius now. We'll come back and talk with you in just a little bit. Is that okay?
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Missy, thank you so much for being part of our Genius community, and thank you for participating. We will get to your questions and we'll run a little bit long today, but let's bring up that Genius. This is going to be on the latest version that the developer just put out. I don't know what changes in particular. Most of the new things that are coming out in these versions are bug fixes. So there's often when you see an update, you should definitely do the update if you can. And the update is usually just something rectifying some issue that may have come up. So that's the most common thing that we're dealing with right now. Now, I don't know if you've all downloaded it. We could see it looks like it's version 16.6 on Apple, if you've downloaded that. Well, let's go ahead and see what the aura looks like, and we'll get to some of your wonderful questions that you've taken the time to put into the chat in just a moment. We'll go a little bit past the hour today, probably to about 15 minutes past the hour. But let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Veronica says, I love these long classes. That's great. Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad. Me too. Okay, very interesting beginning aura, you guys. This is a great beginning aura because it gives us a lot of place to move to. And so what we're seeing here is some fuzziness around the edge, which is going to be more weakness in our vitality. You know, 2 kids recently, that's probably put some drain on the vital force. That's put some strain on the vital force. And so we're not as strong as we could be. And so it's wonderful that I get the honor of being able to give some energy to Missy, who's giving a lot of energy to her kids and her family all day long. So that's wonderful. And so we'll like to be able to maybe look at the kidney meridian as well as conception vessel and governing vessel for this purpose. And then we see a little bit of maybe where we'd like to see the edges a little bit more defined. So there could be some leaking of the energy. And again, that could be to the just fatigue, just adrenal fatigue sort of a situation. And then we have this beautiful sort of light blue in the center. It's anywhere from white to light blue. Now I do put white, could be 7th chakra, crown chakra, and also we could see pink as being 7th or crown chakra. Okay, and so we got a little bit of let me just go to this. Missy, did you want to jump in and tell us anything? Nope. Okay, I'm just going to mute you there. You're fine. You're all good. Okay, so we took a screenshot of that, and we're going to move on to other things here in the program. Let's go ahead. And so if you're new to our community, what you want to do is start with basic process number 1, which is on our website at geniusbiofeedback.com. So we've got nutritional under today's stress, and we've got liver, brain, bacteria, degeneration, and infection. Interesting. Okay, so now we're just gathering up some information. Now, nutritional is usually not poor nutrition, but not absorbing nutrition optimally. Body systems, we've got digestive, muscular, urinary, and reproductive. So I do think that kidney meridian could be really helpful. Again, we're just gathering up information. So we want to quickly go through organs, which is going to be skin. Let's just put all the blues in there. Kidney, skin, liver, stomach coming up there. And then we go to glands, and we've got these coming up. Now, a lot of questions about why testes coming up for women. And I'm not sure what the developer wants to do, if he wants to remove that or if he wants to keep it there. But that could easily be testosterone. And women do have a physiological level of testosterone. And when it goes low, then they have low libido. They don't feel motivated. And so all of those things, that could definitely be part of the equation. While I answer some of your questions, let's go to custom libraries and we'll look at those and get some more information about blood sugar issue, insulin issue, things like that. Now let's go to some of your questions here. We'll go to the Q&A moment here. Blood sugar, is there a certain age range where there's more normal to have to deal with blood sugar, or an age range where issues may get more serious? There's no particular age. But as you get older, you do actually, because you lose muscle mass, then typically as you age, you tend to be less insulin sensitive. So you do build up more insulin resistance as you age. And I think a lot of that has to do with, again, how much fat are you consuming, and then you sort of lose the ability to really metabolize that fat over time, and you build up things in your liver and your gallbladder. So the best thing is whole foods, plant-based diet that tends to be more low fat. And for example, how effective is food on diet? Well, I did that during the lecture. So definitely a vegan is going to do much better. And that's not like I'm saying that. Those are the two studies that we just talked about, the Pennington study and the Yale study. Is it possible in your natural perspective to get your body both to ease and remedy diabetes, and both in type 1 and type 2? There is another book now out, which is called Mastering Diabetes, which is Robbie Barbaro. Well, it's called Mastering Diabetes, and you'll see it's another sort of rendition of the Neil Barnard work by two other folks that are really promoting a whole foods, plant-based diet. And so type 2 diabetes, there's no doubt in my mind, you could, if you're motivated and you go on this type of a food plan, and there are plenty of examples of people who've done it, they do not need to take any medication. They do not need to take insulin. Just depends on the particular person, their situation. But if they follow this food plan, they're going to do something. They're going to improve their blood sugar. They're going to drop some of their insulin needs if they needed it at all, and pretty much almost certainly get off their blood sugar medication like your metformin. That's, I would say, almost everybody could achieve that. Now, type 1, they're never going to get their pancreatic beta islet cells back, as far as I'm aware, unless we have stem cells that can do it, which I'm not aware of existed at this time. So no, but the big thing with people, I'm trying to get to blood sugar. The big thing with folks that have type 1 diabetes that's going to really improve their life is if they're able to take fewer units of insulin, because insulin can be pro-aging, it can store fat. So the best thing that they can hope for is needing the fewest amount of insulin that they can live on to be healthy. And that would be by adopting a lower fat, sort of less calorie density type of a food plan with more fruits and vegetables will get them there. What are your thoughts on eating for your blood type? Just total BS. We had this book when we were in naturopathic school, and some of the students really followed it, but I don't give it any merit whatsoever. It basically gets, I think it was effective to some degree because it got people on more whole foods to some degree. But I really think it don't hold a lot of weight with the work that I've done or what I've seen. I think it's very confusing to people. Okay, so let's see if we have some questions. Does a plant-based diet balance cholesterol? If you're trying to balance cholesterol, it will do an amazing job, because the only cholesterol that could get into our system comes from something that was living, or eggs. So eggs, butter, dairy, meat, chicken, there's no cholesterol in plant-based foods. So because we're not consuming cholesterol, our cholesterol is going to drop very, very quickly, and our bodies have an amazing God-given ability to produce all the cholesterol that we need to stay healthy. So yeah, it's interesting that this blood sugar assessment says that there is some glycosylation. That's kind of interesting. And it says that there's some inflammation and there's adipose blocking the receptors, that there may be an issue with hemoglobin A1C. There's some insulin, leptin resistance, and so forth. So that's interesting that that's still coming up. Let's look at the solutions. So blood sugar solutions are saying B vitamin complex. It's saying, you're going to have to remove that from some of the things that we talked about. I'm going to have to edit this library as things that we've learned to and come to conclusions over time. A dairy-free food plan. So I don't know if dairy is in your diet at all, but I think there's still some room for improvement, but it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look bad at all. So it is saying like gymnema, potassium, holy basil, resveratrol, and so forth. Well, we probably should get some type of a program going. That would be a fun program for our Genius community to do like this, and actually record a combination of diet, lifestyle changes for all of you and see what your labs do. And then we could incorporate some of the Genius balancing as well. I think it would not only be fun, but it would be really, really helpful to you for you to get to see it and experience it for yourself in person, what a difference it can make, whether you just want to regulate your blood sugar better, get over your diabetes, or really maybe even just lose some weight. Because once again, insulin biochemically, when you have high amounts of circulating insulin for a long amount of time, it sends a signal to the body that says store fat. And so that's why those higher levels of insulin that circulate for longer, for whatever reason, insulin resistance can really muck up your attempt to lose weight. So let's see what this one says. Again, talking about the insulin receptors, blood sugar, and an autoimmune reaction and insulin. That's interesting. And remember, everything that we see here is not 100% correct. These are more like muscle tests, but we do take it into account. Waist to hip ratio, increased muscle use. You can just get one of those fabric waist circumference measures. They use them in fabrics you get from the fabric store, and just measure your waist and look at your waist to hip. It's good to just keep an eye on it and just see what it is, and then look it up in the how fit you are. Different websites tell you how fit you are, what your basically your true metabolic weight is based on your weight, your height, and then the circumference of your waist. It's really important to keep an eye on it. And then that's interesting. This is one called pancreatic regeneration and blood sugar harmonizing. And look at all these things that are coming up. Biotin, the delta cell, rhythm and balance restored to the pancreas, alpha lipoic acid. So I think there's probably nothing that's so dangerous at this moment, but it's sort of telling us a little bit about maybe functional issues that could be addressed now, which is why I love the Genius, sort of to alert us early on that there could be an issue. This is all about maybe patterns that are emerging. Allow insulin receptors to receive insulin signaling. I now learn the lesson. That's an interesting one. The alpha cell reduce inflammation. So there seems to be something causing inflammation here, which is kind of fascinating. We want to go back and also look at the different meridians. We wanted to look at the kidney meridian as well. If we go to meridians, because we talked about the kidney meridian. Is it coming up? Let's see where it is. So yeah, there it is, related to adrenal fatigue. So I'm wondering if we put that one in, so it doesn't do the whole one. Let's go ahead and let's include the reds and the blues. And we can also just stop here, and we could do 1 minute of balancing on quick balance to focus on the energy of the kidney meridian. So we could just stop there and focus on the kidney meridian. All right. What about fat for the brain? The truth is that all the foods that are whole food, plant-based processed, they contain a certain amount of fat, and that fat percentage is sufficient. It's the companies that sell DHA or fish oil or avocados or olive oil or meat or dairy, or all of these companies have a vested interest in helping you to think you need to consume to make your brain healthy, and it's exactly the opposite. The more fat that you consume, that affects your vascular system's ability to make nitric oxide, the less healthy your brain will be. The more incredibly elegant your circulation is with a low-fat, whole foods, plant-based diet, the more incredibly healthy and long-lasting your brain will be, and the better performing. It's exactly the opposite of what they want you to think. All right, so let's see if we get any questions here. And just lots of comments here, which I love. And interesting, okay, good. What about those that say that it's not the cholesterol level, but the ratio that's important? No, they're not correct. They're not. Any time that you're eating these foods that are going to elevate the cholesterol, even if the ratio is correct, it's not. There's some really good evidence, I think, about the blue zones, and there's a great book called How to Live to Be 100. It was I think it was Dan Buettner did a wonderful study of indigenous peoples and showing that their low-fat diet really benefited them and helped them increase their longevity. Remember, when you eat that amount of fat that would cause that cholesterol to go up, you impair your mitochondria, and you just simply don't need this fat. It feels good there's a wonderful book that was written by the people who run the True North Center, and it's called The Pleasure Trap, and they teach all about a plant-based diet there as well. And the pleasure trap is anytime that we see fatty foods, whether it's a cashew or a bacon cheeseburger or whatever it might be, sour potato with sour cream, you know, we get that little element in our brain that goes, oh my gosh, it looks so good. I just want to go and just, you know, have the whole bowl or whatever. And that is because of a very ancient mechanism which wanted us not to starve. And whenever we consume fatty foods, the more fatty it is, and if it has salt and sugar connected to it, we get a massive rush, a massive production of dopamine. And so we have almost like a fatal attraction to these foods, and it's especially devious when the companies tell us that we need them to be healthy, because people like to hear good things about their bad habits. You know, we like to hear that those foods would be good for us, but they're incredibly detrimental for our vascular system, for our brain, for our blood sugar regulation, and we do not need them. And trying 21 days or 30 days on a different type of a system where you get those foods completely out of your system, it can be so free. It is liberation on earth to eat this way. And I've been a vegan since I was in my 20s, and then I've done variations on the theme, but I've been very much tricked by this idea of low fat. And at times I've eaten lots of foods with lots of olive oil in them and all of these salads and things like that. But none of them got me the results or the experience of being very energized, very excited about life. But this whole food, plant-based plan that I'm talking about, it was even a big awakening for me to learn that these carbohydrate-rich diets those are the things that enliven us and that can make us feel alive, and they don't harm us one bit. But it's all of this advertisement and marketing that wants us to think something different. I wanted to set the timer on this so that we could get a rectification percentage on this. So she has reproductive, which she said hormones, right? Holy basil, gymnema. So there are some adaptogens and some blood sugar regulators that are coming up for her. Okay, interesting. In the Meridian panel, she also had small intestine triple heater. So thank you, Margaret, for your Chinese medicine interpretation. You can read that into the chat. And so what about the Weston Price recommendations? I mean, you should try the Weston Price recommendations for 30 full days, and then try whole food plant-based diet with the Neil Barnards, and, you know, give your genuine rendition, Sharon, about how you feel. What do you weigh? How do you feel in your body? What do your labs say? I'm going by the different studies about metabolism, about the mitochondria, and about the regulation of blood sugar that I've cited the studies. I try to do that in my classes, to cite the different studies that have been done, so we don't have to just argue theoretically or what sounds good. Remember, your dopamine in the pleasure trap will tell you that those rich foods are good for you because they're very seductive, but they do not help your body on a long-term basis. And this is a very long time that I've been studying this and researching it. So let's go ahead and do a rescan and see what comes up at the top and see what we have here. And it says muscular, alpha lipoic acid, kidney 7, testes, which I think is more related to testosterone, epinephrine optimized. So I think we see some adrenal things coming through, blood sugar, splenic vein, interesting venous things. I think this is a case of really just needing some really good sleep, some good rest, so maybe a vacation, some refilling of the reserves, and maybe a little bit of blood sugar balancing, maybe some tweaks in the diet. And I think, you know, you're going to be fine. I think these are just more functional issues. We're going to look at the aura in just a minute, so we can finish up in just a few minutes here. Can type 1 diabetics heal? So as I mentioned, what you can do with, thing about a type 1 diabetic, they have no ability to produce insulin. They don't have those islet cells that can produce the insulin, so they do need insulin. However, if they eat in the way that I've described, they will take much fewer units of insulin. And Mastering Diabetes was written, one of the authors, Robbie, he is a type 1 diabetic, and he lives on a mostly fruit-based diet. You should really read and learn. And the other part of his diet is greens and salad, but mostly fruit. And he has an amazing ability to metabolize sugar. And he's something like cut his needed insulin in half as a type 1 diabetic. It's an incredible amount of improvement that he was able to do, and anybody could do it. It's really the fat that makes the difference, that really causes a lot of problems, and that's what they want you to stock up on. They want you to stock up on avocados and olive oil and eggs and everything. So keep that in mind. It's ultimately your decision based on your research, what you try to do. Try to bring you the best information, because I want you to be absolutely the healthiest and the most resilient during the times that we're living in. Let's take a look at that aura and see how it's changed. So ketogenic diet can increase the possibility of diabetes over time. Now you're getting it, Cecile. You're totally getting it. It's like the light is going on. Those intramyocellular lipids that, ketogenics, they work great in the beginning because you're giving up all of your glycogen by no longer consuming any of the carbohydrates. So in the beginning, your tummy feels flat and you feel good, but over time, you're going to tend to feel fatigued. But yes, you're going to be impairing your own body's ability to process insulin. It's really unfortunate because people who eat a ketogenic diet are focusing on the foods that really don't give their body the most support that there could be. Now look at that beautiful aura. Now it's an interesting green aura. I think we need a little bit more digestive cleansing, and it's a little bit muddied, telling us the vital force has not emerged as strongly as we want to, but it's amazing. Let's look at the difference between these two auras. Here's the before and here's the after. Here's the before and here's the after. Now there's a lot, look at that upper part there that we were talking about. It's a lot less fuzzy, and there's a lot more sort of, not completely, but there's some completion going on there. Beautiful purple. A lot of that sort of smoky gray green is gone. Let's bring back on our wonderful Missy and find out how she's doing, what her thoughts are on this. So Missy, how has this information been landing with you as we've been going through this?
It sounds about right, spot on. And I've known I've needed to take a vacation. I just don't know how to make it happen.
I get it with the kids.
It really is figuring out the trying to chill out more and relax more. And it's like I needed to hear it again. I don't know, but it's hard to figure it out. But everything else sounded spot on.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad that you joined us today. We had the ability to send you some love, send you some free.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And if you have your Quanta capsule, did you issue yourself a Quanta capsule?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Yep.
so if you can put usually people don't really take your email or anything, but if you want to put the email address into the chat, then I can go ahead and I can just show the Quanta capsule export. All right, awesome. Missy, thank you so much. And I'm so glad you're part of our Genius community.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so it's wonderful to be able to work on her today. And yeah, Danielle says, could that be gallbladder? That's what I was thinking as well. I was thinking that now we're moving into a place, maybe cleaning up that digestion, and maybe we're just at the next stage, which is, I do think that was my first comment, that we need more digestive cleansing, and that's why I was thinking that. So Danielle, I think you're very, very spot on there. Now, let's go ahead and just say a couple of things. There are some updates to the Quanta capsule. So to get updates to the Quanta capsule, all you need to do is go to your app store and just click on Quanta capsule again in the app store, and we'll automatically refresh it and update it. I haven't had a chance to log into mine, but what's happening now with the Quanta capsule is that when you choose the frequency, shape, and form, and we can go over this next time, like sine, square tooth, or what is it? Let's see, it's sine and then square and then sawtooth. And those are the three types of waves. So for example, square wave is very good when you're working on some type of an infection. Square waves are typically generated with Rife technology. So you can now choose the type of frequency, say a square wave, and when you export it to your client's Quanta capsule, they will now be able to run it in that same square wave. So big kudos to the developer, wonderful addition, a nice change to the quantum capsule. So you can go ahead and change that. So let's go ahead and let's show that. So if we go here to our frequency, shape, and form, now what we have to do is we have to go to activate sonic signatures. I don't know why the developer did it this way. Let's not get into that. But what we have to do here is activate sonic signatures. Then it shows the waveform at the bottom. So I'm going to actually choose, I would have chosen sine wave anyway, just because sine wave helps you to get back into rhythm. It helps you to, it's really the optimizing wave for physiology, because your physiology, your heart, your brain, these are all in a sine wave. So I'm going to choose the sine wave. Then I'm going to go to, let's go back to our progressive insights, and I'm going to go to export to quantum capsule. I'm going to select the high items, export to quantum capsule, and then hopefully it's working. And then we go ahead, and what we do is we put in our client's email address. And then we export. And then that will go to their capsule. They can import it. Now she can run all of those. And just for fun, let's show it one more time. Let's give her another export. And what we're going to do this time is let's go back. And instead, we'll go to frequency, shape, and form. And now we'll actually choose, let's go ahead and choose alternating so that she could have them alternate. So we're going to go back here. We'll go to progressive insights. And now we'll choose all of them. And we'll export all of them. And so she'll also have the ability to run all of them. And when she runs through all of them, they'll alternate through square, sine, and sawtooth. Let's see if I can paste that. So yeah, I was able to do that through the copy and paste function from my desktop to my iPad. So that was great. And then export again, much faster. Okay, so let's see if there's any final questions or comments as we close down the day. Now, Karen had a wonderful comment. She said, pancreas, colonic, same chakra, small, large, transverse colon, top centers do hydrotherapy, hint, hint. So maybe we can get more information from her during the podcast on Thursday, because we are going to wrap everything up. But that's a very fascinating comment that we would want to hear more about definitely in the future. Okay. So let's just see if there's any final questions in the Q&A or in the chat here as we get ready to finish up for the day. And let's see what we've got here. So it was wonderful to have Missy. Remember that we have our Tuesday night coming up. We're going to be having our terahertz class. So remember to join us for our terahertz class on Tuesday. Starting the 14th, which is wonderful Valentine's Day, we're going to have our prayer circle. So we're going to be using intention. We're going to pray for other people. We're going to pray for global healing. It will have some connection to the genius, but it's really just a free session for people to bring, whether they want to be prayed for, they want to pray for global healing. We'll read some inspiration from the scriptures, from the Bible, but be from different, from Zen, things that are inspirational that will inspire you. That's going to be on Tuesdays at noon, starting on February 14th. We'll have a link for you soon. And then you can see everything going on in our community on our events calendar. So if you go to our events calendar here, you can see all the things that are happening in our community. You can sign up for some of them. You can sign up for all of them. Many of them are free. And when you're talking about the genius, remember to tell people that this is a really active community where people share ideas and where we have lots of ongoing participation activity. A lot of people get certain types of quantum biofeedback or frequency devices, and they never hear from the company again. And so we're so proud that we get to interact with you, each and every week in our Genius Community Connect, on Facebook and through our different classes. So thank you everyone for being part of our community. Have a wonderful rest of your week. If you have questions, send me a message, Ariel at geniusbiofeedback.com. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye for now.